And next is Sandy Perry. Sandy Perry is representing Jill Stein of the Green Party. And I know there are many supporters of the Green Party here. And Jill Stein this is her second time running for president.
Creation. The question was, what is your candidate's plan to address our economy, to grow our economy and create jobs?
Hello. Actually, I agree with a lot of what Natalie just said, and I actually disagree with Robert, because really our economy is not working. Whether it's, if you look at, I pulled out this chart, which I happen to have, it's about manufacturing, production and manufacturing employment in the United States at the current time. And if you can figure out from looking at this chart, manufacturing employment is at an all-time low, while manufacturing production is at an all-time high. So we're producing more with more technology and less jobs. That's the basic problem that we have with our economy. And that's what everybody was blaming Obama for, the fact that the economy's only grown 1% a year recently. It's worse than that all over the rest of the world. The economy's not growing because of the problem with technology in the economy. And so the only solution is one similar. We have a very specific plan. It's called the Green New Deal, because our plan is to not only address the economic crisis that we're involved in, the horrible poverty we have here in the richest country in the world. Here we are in Silicon Valley, and you walk down the street out there, there's people living in tents on the streets in your city, in the richest city, in the richest area in the entire world. And it's shameful. And the reason is because the government's doing nothing. We believe in addressing poverty. We believe in addressing the lack of jobs. We believe in, and we call it the Green New Deal, because we also believe in addressing the climate crisis. We can put people to work. The government, this is where I disagree with Robert, the government, those are real jobs. People create real value when they are cleaning up the environment, when they're building infrastructure, when they're building transit. Those are real jobs, real value, and we need a Green New Deal to simultaneously address climate change and the economic problems that we have.
Thank you very much.
So heard a lot about immigration during the debate. So my question is simply, what is your plan on immigration, specifically in regard to deportation? So basically Trump's argument is we need a strong border and very strict enforcement. Clinton's plan is to continue the same deferred action programs we've had under Obama, but also keep our border strong and deport more serious criminals. So what is your position on immigration?
Maybe this is a part of the problem of being number 3 here. I agree with these people. I agree with these people over here. But yeah, the Green Party is on record, and we fought for immigrant rights for as long as we've been around. And basically, immigrant rights are workers' rights. Anytime you have a situation where you have a workplace and some of the people are immigrants, some are not, you have to defend the rights of everyone, or you're not going to be able to have a decent workplace. You're not going to have any unity. And the same thing applies. We've got a lot of, we have the 3 minor parties here. We've got a lot of beautiful programs, but none of them are ever going to be implemented unless we can unite our people. If we can't unite our people, we cannot get Medicare for all. We can't get housing for the homeless. We can't get housing for anybody. We can't get union rights. We can't increase the minimum wage. We have got to be united. There's never going to be any unity unless we stand up for the rights of everyone. And if we don't stand up for the rights of everyone, anybody that we leave out, there's these candidates that we saw up here and their representatives and the corporations. we'll go and work with them and organize them against us and against everything that we're fighting for. So we, as working people, we have to work together, and we have to stand up and fight for these things. As far as jobs, a lot of people say that immigrants are taking jobs. What's taking jobs is technology, as I was saying earlier. The only way to increase jobs is to get these government programs. The only way to get these government programs is to unite them. I was in an argument with this homeless guy today. He said, they take care of the women all the time first. They don't take care of the men. If we go down that route and fight over who's going to get these little crumbs which they give to homeless people in San Jose, we'll never get anywhere. We've got to unite.
Thank you. Trade deals and the impending Trans-Pacific Partnership, which has been promised to be passed at the lame duck session of Congress.
Yeah, the Green Party is on record as being opposed to the TPP, opposed to NAFTA, opposed to the TTIP for many of the same reasons. Again, one of the things which I strongly disagreed with what Donald Trump said on the thing. He said our trade deals are negotiated by bureaucrats. If you read the WikiLeaks leaks, which actually revealed what was in the trade deals, these were negotiated by the large corporations. These were not negotiated by government bureaucrats. In fact, that's one of the problems, as Natalie pointed out, is this whole process is being driven by the largest corporations and the largest banks, the same people who brought us the crash here in 2008, the same people who've been destroying our economy ever since. They want to have free rein to continue these policies and make them worse. It's a continuation of NAFTA. One thing I do agree with Donald Trump about, and don't get me wrong, I'm not for him in any way, shape, or form, is that NAFTA was a disaster. Jobs were lost on both sides of the border for the benefit of the large corporations. And so these trade deals are terrible. They're and the other thing that they do is they move us further away from a local sustainable economy, which the Green Party believes in. Thank you.
So I'd like to know your position, your candidate and your party's position in terms of our military presence and our interventionist actions going forward in Syria, in Yemen, and Iran, as has been mentioned by both Secretary of State and Donald Trump.
Let me start on that side this time.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was going to ask if there's any objections. Let's have Sandy start, thank you.
Okay, Jill Stein has called for a 50%, at least a 50% reduction in our military budget and the diversion of those funds to taking care of human needs here at home. And she's called for establishing a foreign policy based on diplomacy, international law, human rights, and nonviolent support for democratic movements throughout the world. So the basic idea of our policy is, instead of invading countries, which as we did, those candidates were arguing over who supported which invasion the most, and I'm quite sure on my reading both of them supported almost all those invasions. So we believe in reducing the bases. We have bases, 700 military bases in various countries around the world, and we believe in putting an end to that. If we have, to the extent that we have a military at all, it should be more aimed toward defense, and it should be more geared to the National Guard in terms of defending our country. The situation that we've gotten involved in the Middle East is entirely of our own making. We've been meddling in the Middle East since World War II, and actually, well, not so much before then, but since World War II, we've been our government has been funding Saudi Arabia, funding Israel, funding one country after another in the Middle East, and all the weapons we've just sent billions of dollars of weapons into the Middle East, and we wonder why they're killing each other. We invaded Iraq. 1 million people died during the invasion of Iraq, and then we wonder, why do they hate us? Why do they hate us? We went and killed 1 million of their country people, and then they wonder, why do they hate us? Where did ISIS come from? ISIS is fully armed by the United States. We sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, they siphon it around, and it ends up in the hands of ISIS and a lot of other groups.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a clarification for Sandy for the Green Party. So you mentioned that the Green Party would support democratic projects overseas. So Israel is credited with being the sole democracy in the Middle East. Would the Green Party support the Israeli government?
No. And I think that whole question of democratic projects, I'm just reading this off the campaign worksheet, and it's there's a lot of so-called, our government does get involved in a lot of so-called democratic projects, which are anything but democratic. They had these, what do they call them, the color revolutions in Eastern Europe, and really these were covers by our government to actually form military alliances with groups in Eastern Europe to surround Russia. And I mean, the Ukraine, they were supposedly, the United States was supposedly supporting a democratic movement there, which then launched a military coup and took over the Ukraine and became an ally of the United States, directed very closely at Russia. So we do not support that kind of so-called democratic movement at all.
What are your policies and plans, your candidates and parties' policies and plans regarding the extraction, use, transportation, and regulation of fossil fuels?
You want me to start?
Sure, let's start with Sandy. You each have 2 minutes for that.
I'll start because our candidate has the best policy on this, which is the Green New Deal, and it's to end all extraction of fossil fuels by 2030. And there's scientists out of Stanford who have said it's completely feasible, completely practical to have a complete transition to fully renewable energy by 2030. And so our candidate's plan, the Green New Deal, is to address that by having this total transition. So we're against oil trains, we're against fracking, unlike Hillary, and Hillary, again, going back to WikiLeaks, you find out that Hillary has 2 positions on that, a public position and a private position, or a public position and a corporate position, depending on who she's talking to. We believe in ending the pipelines. We're in full support, and people might have seen Jill Stein and got an arrest warrant put out for her support for the tribes fighting the North Dakota pipeline. So we are in 100% support of that. That is the cornerstone of our plan. We agree with Naomi Klein had a book. It was called Capitalism versus the Climate. And we believe in that approach that capitalism is destroying our climate, and we have to have proactive programs to, including huge amounts of government funding to save our climate, or we're all dead.
So what would you do about the over $1 trillion in student debt now? And also, how would your candidates and parties ensure that graduates have access to jobs that will actually allow them to pay back this student debt? And we'll start with Sandy Perry.
Okay, we have actually gotten a lot of people, including people in this room, who came into the Jill Stein campaign out of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And a lot of what drove the Bernie Sanders campaign was his position against student debt. And actually, it turns out that Jill Stein has a stronger position, not only calling for free tuition and free colleging, but actually canceling the student debt completely. It says, we bailed out Wall Street bankers with 17 trillion. It's time to bail out the students. And she's absolutely right. There's no reason we can't do that. She was attacked by John Oliver for her plan for canceling student debt and saying that the Federal Reserve couldn't do that and she can't tell the Federal Reserve what to do. But actually, Jill Stein's, if you read her program, Jill Stein's plan is to democratize the Federal Reserve and to put it under the control of Congress, which is where it was supposed to be. That's where the control of our currency is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be run by Goldman Sachs and by the private banks. Right now, Congress, and this goes back to 1913, Congress handed over its constitutional authority to coin our money and to control our money system to a bunch of banks, a bunch of private banks, which are using their control of money system to enrich themselves. And they enrich themselves to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars a year. In fact, our national debt that they were all complaining about between the two major parties, almost all of it goes to these banks, and it's paid to them for coining the money, which Congress is supposed to do. And if Congress coined it, we wouldn't owe anybody. So anyway, Jill Stein believes that the student debt can be repaid, if not by what she calls the quantitative easing, by straight cancellation. It can be repaid through a Wall Street transaction tax. It can be repaid through money from the military budget. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So my question is, what are your candidate or parties' policies and plans regarding healthcare as a human right? And what do you think the role of the government should be in providing that?
Okay, Medicare for All, which is what a single-payer system is commonly known as here, was also a cornerstone, and in many respects it was one of the very best planks in Sanders' platform. And it was one which he was viciously attacked by Hillary and people who stand up for Medicare for All were called dreamers, and they even hired, I'm sorry, I'm sounding like Donald Trump again. Hillary hired economists to go write editorials against single-payer health care, but that actually is true. Some of Donald's lies, there's a grain of truth to them. That's the way these demagogues work. But at any rate, we believe, almost everything that Natalie said. Healthcare is a human right. Housing is a human right. Jobs are human rights. Water is a human right. A home is a human right. Basic human needs, the things that we as human beings need to survive, especially in such a rich, wealthy country. And they all go up there and argue about how poor we are, how America's poor, we've got this huge debt, we can't afford to do anything. It's just a lie. We have a distribution problem. I remember the old story about Sitting Bull went to Washington, D.C., and they said, well, how do you like Washington, D.C.? And he said, well, the white men in Washington, D.C. back in his days was somewhat similar to the way it is today. He says, well, the white man sure knows how to create a lot of wealth, but he sure doesn't know how to distribute it. And that's still our problem as a country. We don't know how to distribute our wealth, and we need to change that. Medicare for All is part of that. I'd also like to add, the Medicare for All is, one of the big myths they have in America is that government is inefficient. Medicare for All is the most efficient form of providing health care, and it's actually it's a system they have in Canada, it's a system they have all across Europe, and on average it costs about half per person, half per capita, the cost of what we pay in this country for garbage health care. With all these things that you're talking about. What you're talking about is Obamacare, and I will concede that Obamacare is a mess. The reason Obamacare is a mess is because they cut deals with the pharmaceutical corporations and with the insurance companies before they implemented it. So each of those special interests got a huge cut out of Obamacare, and it's increasing, and the whole plan is beginning to unravel because of that. And none of those problems would be present with a Medicare for All system. I see a lot of my Medicare for All allies, single payer coalition here is in the House. They've been fighting for single payer for decades.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the Green Party has a fundamentally different idea of the role of government from the Libertarians, obviously, and just the role of society. We as a society is a collective thing. We all depend upon each other. And so what we need to do, we need to work out our relationships through a democratic process. And the government is part of that democratic process. It's not all gonna be solved by laws of supply economics and supply and demand. And in fact, I think the Green Party more leans toward, actually, there's a lot of socialists in the Green Party. The Green Party doesn't use the term socialist, but if you look at our program, it leans in that direction of a heavy government role in solving basic problems of basic human needs, which are not being met by our. We have an economy that's broken. We have an environment that's broken. We have a democracy that's broken. We have a criminal justice system that's broken. And we have got to change completely. The only way it'll change is through people like you getting involved. Unfortunately, these three parties are small, they're minor parties, they're marginalized, they're kept out of the debate. We can't get in these debates, and I thank you guys for giving us a chance to be here. But the only way this will change is when you get involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So this idea that healthcare, housing, jobs are a human right. If a job is a constitutional right, if a house is a constitutional right, or let's just stick with a job. If a job is a right, why should I not work or make any effort to find one myself? I mean, if I know that something's just going to be given to me, why should I make any effort myself? And so I think this idea, I'm concerned about this idea that socialism, it sounds like a really good idea, but since we live in such a large country, we don't have that personal connection like we do in a commune, where you're in a tribe and you see heart to heart with someone. So considering that I guess I'll phrase this to you, Robert, since we live in a country that is so large and we don't have that personal connection, if we're just granted things, why are these other two candidates wrong? Isn't that taking away that motivation from people? I'm not saying that there's not problems with the way that our system is, but isn't the problem crony capitalism and not capitalism itself?
Okay, there's a basic, in my experience in life, and I've been around here for a few years, maybe more than some of the other panelists here, is that people have a basic drive and a desire to contribute in society. And they have this program here in San Jose, which I do not approve of at all. I do not like it. It's called Downtown Streets Team, and they actually get the homeless to go clean up the city for free. People line up, homeless people who, if you listen to the basic propaganda about them, are bums, no good, drug addicts, and totally unmotivated and antisocial. They line up for the opportunity to go clean up the streets in San Jose for free. So that to me is enough proof that people want to contribute. People want to be part of something. People want to contribute to society. That's in some ways our deepest human passion. So I think that will resolve any problems that come up. There are motivations with people when they don't get respected and they get.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
and people have problems with that when they don't get respected at work.
Thank you. I see.
And most importantly about the Downtown Streets Team, they're cleaning up the creeks as well.
Yeah.
I definitely was never a Republican. And also I left the Democratic Party about 10 years ago after I found out about all the cronyism that goes on and the, the exploitation and corruption that goes on in the Democratic Party. But, my values align more with the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party. But I'm wondering, I'd love to see even the Libertarian Party, all of you rise up, locally, statewide, and federally. What are your plans, feasibly and practicably, maybe they're the same, on being more successful on all levels of government? Because right now, we really need you, and quite frankly, we're not seeing too much success. We're still seeing the old bipartisan politics.
You also, for you both to mention how many states you are on the ballot for, maybe what percentage of voters have access to your...
We're on this.
Yeah, the Green Party's on the ballot in 45 states. I think we've got a write-in deal going in 3 other states. So we're definitely on the ballot, but our percentages are low. They're not as high as the Libertarians. But I really think the direction to go in is actually the one in which you're involved in, this Progressive Elections Forum, is that the alternative parties have got to grapple with the people that are on the ground fighting the basic issues of housing, healthcare, jobs, fighting against poverty, and basic issues of democracy. We need to get with those organizations and figure out a way to really actually form a real progressive alliance which will actually run candidates. They don't necessarily have to be green, don't necessarily have to be, well, I'm getting a 0. But I think you have part of the solution yourself in this progressive elections movement.
In talking about foreign policy, the major party candidates were mostly looking at the Middle East, and the discussions here about the U.S. not intervening in the various less developed, chaotic places, but haven't really talked, so that neither of them really, and you guys here so far, haven't really talked about how the United States should deal with the other major powers in the world, which aren't the superpower the U.S. is, but like China, Russia, Germany, and the EU, and so forth. What and how should the U.S. look at those countries, and what, if anything, should they be doing?
Okay. Again, our basic foreign policy is diplomacy, international law, human rights. It's to deal with countries on that basis. We don't believe that we need to have a war. We don't believe we need to surround Russia, as the major parties do. We don't need to believe that. That, in my opinion, is a lot of what the Middle East is about. In addition to oil, it's about relationships with Russia and China and attempts to isolate them politically and surround them not only politically but militarily. And so the same thing we said before, bring back the troops from these 700 bases all over the world, bring them back here. Stop intervening in areas all over the world, because we also do it in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, and Japan, Korea. We need to stop it.
All right.
So I'm a highly educated, very poor person, and I was wondering if, and I don't have a TV, so I didn't want to watch those debates, but I do listen to 94.1, and so I'm fairly informed, and I'm also have a lot of people that have been helping me to get educated about this politics. My question about all the broken systems is, do you also feel that, I didn't hear anyone talking about how about mentally ill subjects and how we're right now housing them in the jails, and do you feel that's a broken system?
Do 30 seconds each.
It's definitely a broken system. Michael Tyree was killed a year ago in the jail in San Jose. He was killed because he didn't, he actually was released from jail, but because he didn't have a home, they kept him overnight, and that was the night he was beaten to death. It's completely broken. We believe in health care for everyone, to take care of everyone's need, and we believe in housing for people with mental illness. Right now, people are just dumped out on the streets.
Last question.
All right, and this goes back to foreign policy, and I'm going to direct this to you, Sandy. In my eyes, scaling back the military to the amount you've suggested and closing all the military bases would have a destabilizing effect on the world. For example, if we didn't have our troops stationed in Japan, I think it would be much more likely that North Korea would invade South Korea. Don't you think that's a legitimate danger to think about?
No, I think the reason North Korea might invade South Korea is because we've been involved in that area militarily, and we've threatened them for decades. And I think if they were not so concerned that they themselves would be invaded, I think we would be in a much better shape. I think our military presence around the world is not a stabilizing presence. It's all of these bases which are destabilizing the entire world, in our opinion.